Welcome to Groom Scroll. Bum, bum, bum. Like, you know what I mean? There should be like a little intro.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be it. I'm just going to add some noise to it.
Yeah, I also forgot to mention I had that post go absolutely batshit bananas this weekend. So I spent a considerable amount of time this weekend also like commenting and responding and answering people. And dude, they're like still going. It's crazy. Also, I met this lady I think we should have on the podcast. Lenora Claire.
Oh my God, beautiful name.
So yeah, she's the one that like created and runs a consulting company that plays as like a liaison middleman between productions of like documentaries and or like non-scripted and scripted productions and survivors of crimes to make sure that they're like trauma informed and how they're handling things. And so she commented on my post, like, I love that you're like talking about this because the show put a ton of effort into it. And then we started talking, and she was a part of a documentary in the UK made about Marilyn Manson. So I had her send me the information about that today. So the name of that one is Marilyn Manson Unmasked. And it was on Channel 4 in the UK and across Europe, but it does not have US distribution at the moment. So I think maybe you could watch it online. Anyways, she was like sending me a laundry list of like people and accounts and things to check out, and she was like, this person, you know, started their own company and they do sexual assault attorney, like a sexual assault attorney, and all the people do intakes are survivors of sexual assault. So they're like all taking the intakes with like a lot of care, and like they're not just treating them like a way to make money and then never talking to them again. Anyways, her and I are now bestie internet friends, and we chatted forever about a million things. And she seems really cool, and she's actively working right now with 2 senators in California to try to get a law passed there to make it so that victims of stalking do not have to testify in person in front of their abuser, because her friend got it passed in Colorado, and so now she's trying to get it passed in California because
Fuck yeah,
they are required, and she's a victim of stalking or survivor of stalking herself. So anyways, crazy town experience. The posts are at like 45,000 views each.
Before we continue this conversation, can we just rewind to the beginning? So listeners have heard us. No. Listeners,
you can cut all of that shit I just talked about.
I want
put it somewhere else that makes sense.
That's okay. No. We're going to. It's fine. So listeners, you all have heard us talk about. I think so. I think at some point it's made it in the cut, either at like the end outro of our podcast or in the podcast itself. Sarah and I both have a Sunday night show. I'm watching House of the Dragon. Sarah's watching Vampire Lestat. And Sarah has been talking to me about how watching the show is just started off as like, ooh, the sexy vampire. And this season it's like, oh my God, no, there's other things happening and I can really relate. So can you please, Sarah, explain to the listeners what you mean by the post, what you did?
So sorry.
And
I was just talking to you.
No, I know, but I think we should leave this in because it's one, it super relates, but also like the aftermath of it all, like this woman that you're meeting, all these other people that are reaching out to you and really responding well to this post that you made. I think it's something that we should talk about for the show as well. So can you talk about what this post is and everything that's happened since, and then we'll pick back up on what you were just saying.
Okay. I'm so sorry. Yes. I'm obsessed with Vampire Lestat. The season finale was this last Sunday. RIP. I'm very sad. It's over, and I have to wait like another year or two to get more of this content. But it's probably good for my mental health to have a break from what was this season. So yeah, the season, I'm not going to try to explain it because I will just rant about it for 45 minutes, but the season really has been impacting me in a way that I did not see coming. Like I was like, yay, my vampire show. And it's a dramatic show. It's heavy. And the first 2 seasons have a ton of heavy stuff. It's not like they didn't, but something about this season really hit home on like the level of being a sexual abuse survivor. And I would say because they really lean into it in this season and really, like, show it, they talk about it. There's multiple incidents of rape, there's, like, human trafficking, and there's also incest that is all brought up in the season. And I just, like, couldn't stop thinking about it to the point where I was like, "Am I losing my mind?" You know what I mean? Like, when things like pop culture, as we are about to talk about in this episode with this documentary, shake you up so much, there's a party that's like, "Is this ridiculous? Like, should I be this worked up about this song or this book or this movie or the show or whatever it is?" Um, and I talked to my therapist about it, and I talked to you about it, and I talked to Carl about it, and I just kept feeling like I needed to express it in some way. So I made a social media post. I think the first one was like 6 slides or something, digging into my analysis of how the show is representing sexual abuse trauma responses specifically. And I put it and I, like, made it, and I took a ton of time on it, and I did the graphic design to match their marketing, and I, like, scanned the internet for all these photos of the right scenes to represent the thing I was talking about, and I rewrote thing every, like, 1,000 times, and I sent it to Diana, and I was like, "Is this dumb?" Like, "Is this?" Because sometimes, Diana, sometimes we make therapeutic things that are just for us. No one else is really gonna enjoy looking at them, right? Like, sometimes the making is the point, not necessarily the sharing. And so I didn't know if I was just being silly or whatever. Anyways, and Diana thankfully was like, "Oh my god, this is great. I think it's awesome. Go for it." And so I posted it, and now it has like 45,000 views, and I think over 5,000 likes and over 100 comments, and like 600 reshares and 800 posts to, like, stories, and I'm not
It reached
usually
people.
it blew up, and it's been really cool. And so I did another one about the incest storyline, and I did one yesterday about the other character who is a rape survivor on the show, and then I plan on doing one more because there's another character, Armand, who was put into, like, child prostitution, call it what it is, human trafficking and rape, right? When he was, like, 13. And his stuff is, like, less explored on the show because he's a little bit more of a tertiary character, but, like, I've had a bunch of people asking for it, so that's my next one I'm gonna do. But it's been a trip, dude, and it's been really validating to, like, hear people's responses to it because so many people literally wrote, like, "I had to start going back to therapy because of this season of this show."
Wow.
Yeah, it's, like, really hitting people hard,
Yeah.
and I think the reason it's hitting hard is because they did a good job. They put the care into how depicting it in such a realistic and not the actual acts, but depicting the emotional fallout
The
for the survivor and,
trauma.
like, oh my
Yeah.
god, they did, like, such a great job, and the actors and the writers, everything.
Art is a way that, like, we understand history in a better way. Art is a way that we can, like, humanize each other, humanize experiences maybe we can't relate to. And I know we've said before in this podcast, there's no such thing as bad art, and there's not such thing as bad art, but there is such thing as bullshit that some people try to pass off as art,
It's
like
true.
what we're gonna
Mhm.
talk about today. And you don't do that. And I just think you are such an amazing artist who clearly like reaches people. This conversation about your Vampire Lestat post, before I made you explain it from the beginning, you were talking about this woman that you met who, can you remind us again what she does?
She said, "I've merged both worlds with my consulting company. I've worked on true crime shows on sets as a liaison between survivors and production. I've also worked on scripted shows," and then, in brackets, "maybe a certain one you like," advising on these themes. And then her company, Lenora Claire Consulting. Our goal is to ensure productions are providing both a platform and a safe space for victims and survivors to share their stories with dignity during their most vulnerable moment. So it's kind of like, so she explained it as, now sets have intimacy coordinators.
Mhm.
And she's like, I'm pretty much, my consulting company is trying to be like a crime survivor coordinator to make sure, like, just like we're making sure everyone is like comfortable in an intimate sex scene in a movie, I want these people to make sure that they're taken care of and they're comfortable and they're not being mistreated or re-traumatized when
Yeah.
participating
Okay.
in these productions, which I think
Super
is
important.
fascinating. Like,
It's
I've
fascinating.
never thought about that could be a thing that one could be doing.
It's progress, I think, that we're making as a society, that like, yeah, this is now gonna be hopefully on its way to becoming a standard before like putting out movies or content that could be re-traumatizing. I really like the idea of having her on because I mean, this is what we do on Groom Scroll. This is the part of the
Yeah.
podcast where we pick apart movies and we're like, that's fucked
Mhm.
up. It wouldn't be like this, or it shouldn't be like this, or this is the problem. So I think it'd be fascinating to talk to Lenora for like a very like I don't know, either for whatever. It'll be awesome to talk to her. Anyway,
Mm.
the reason I brought her up is because she mentioned a UK documentary about Marilyn Manson, which you had mentioned earlier on in this recording.
Mhm.
But today we are going to be talking about a US based documentary that is called Phoenix Rising, and it came out in 2022. I think a production of HBO. That's where you can find it now,
Mhm.
is on HBO Max.
I mean, I would say it's just like following Evan Rachel Wood's story, processing her grooming, sexual and physical and emotional and psychological abuse at the hands of Marilyn Manson, not only on a personal level, but then also stepping up and working with legislators to, pass a bill to decrease the statute of limitation in California. And then eventually in the end, her publicly naming him as her abuser. Did
Perfect.
that count
That's pretty
as a
much it.
synopsis?
That's perfect as always. This, I thought it was just from what I remember. I had seen it before. Sarah, has you seen it before?
I had seen it before. I think I watched it the year it came out, which is also the year that we met each other, I do believe, 2022,
Yes.
right?
Uh huh.
Yeah, I watched it that year, but then I just rewatched it for this week so that I would have it fresh in the mind.
Perfect. So yeah, we had both seen it before. I have shared on the show and that thinking about Evan Rachel Wood in 2021 is when I had my aha moment, is like what led to my aha moment. She publicly named Brian Warner, aka Marilyn Manson, as her abuser in like I think early February 2021, and I had my aha moment in March. And so yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm really happy we're talking about this documentary today because it was such an important part of my healing journey, of my processing journey. And I haven't really paid that much attention to the case and the lawsuits
Mhm.
since, mostly because like I'm just like fuck that guy, fuck Marilyn
Yeah.
Manson. But much like the Epstein case, oh my God. And I just want to say, if you're team fuck Epstein, you should be team fuck Marilyn Manson. Like, there is
Yeah.
more than enough evidence to
Yeah.
show that he has done some fucked up shit involving minors, involving abusing women. So yeah,
Mhm.
we'll get into it. But I'm glad that we're talking about it today so we can provide some updates for our listeners about what's been going on since the documentary came out in 2022.
Sounds good.
Where to begin?
I guess we could just start with some facts.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So they met each other at a party, and he invited her to participate in a project he was working on based off of Lewis Carroll. Now, can I just sidebar about Lewis Carroll for about 5 fucking minutes here? So, Lewis Carroll is the writer of Alice in Wonderland. I went to art school, and in art school, you had to take one semester long class where you studied and learned about one artist. And that's all you did. It was one artist. And every year they would just pick one artist for this class. And I got hosed and I like missed the Jim Henson opportunity. And there was a Tim Burton one. I didn't get to do that either. And I'm still very mad about it. And I had to take the Lewis Carroll one. And I was like, whatever, fine. Alice in Wonderland's great. One of my favorite childhood movies. That motherfucker was for sure a pedophile. And the backstory of how he wrote Alice in Wonderland and who he wrote it for, who was an actual, like, I think 9-year-old girl named Alice, is so fucked up. And we spent an entire semester like pretty much tiptoeing around the fact that this guy was a pedophile. And I remember it like coming up in class over and over, and the teacher kind of being like, eh. And in retrospect, really now looking back and going, why the fuck of all the artists in the world? First
Yeah.
of all, they were always men, by the way, that these classes centered around. Why did we choose to still have it when a large chunk of the curriculum was acknowledging that he fell in love with, or that was his idea of what was happening, a literal like 8 or 9-year-old girl, wrote this book for her, to the point that like he wrote letters to her. Her family like destroyed the letters he wrote. His family tore pages out of his personal diaries and burned them to like destroy evidence of his relationship with this like girl. Why did we still choose to have this class? You know, what the fuck are we doing? God
Mhm.
damn it. Like, can we just stop idolizing pedophiles and
Same thing
men
with
that do
Edgar Allan
terrible
Poe.
things?
Like, can we stop?
Dude, and it's like you can like acknowledge the impact that the work has had, but we don't need to obsess over the person. And the class was very much about the person. Anyways. So yes, he invited her to participate in a project about a pedophile, like about Lewis Carroll, which I just was such a red flag for me. Anyways, when they met, she was 18 and he was 37. And I think that is very much worth acknowledging. That age gap is very severe.
Like, if this 36-year-old man, he's dating or interested in an 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, like, that says something about the older person, and I feel like that's
Mm.
where we need to really
Mhm.
start instead of, like, because what happened with Evan Rachel Wood is she got labeled as, like, a homewrecker and a little Lolita, because Marilyn Manson was still married to Dita Von Teese, when he met Evan Rachel Wood. According to Evan Rachel Wood, should I just call her Evan? Are we first name basis? According to Evan, we're friends.
I think that's fine.
In the documentary Phoenix Rising, Evan does share that Marilyn Manson was still married to Dita Von Teese the first time that he kissed Evan. Allegedly. That's when he kissed her for the first time. It's just really telling. Like, why is a 36-year-old they have influence over someone with that much of an
Mhm.
age gap? Like, it's just like the
Well, and he
emotional
was
maturity.
huge. And he was huge at the time too. I mean, like, I think that maybe for anyone who's younger, like, might not realize that like he was a massive star at that time too. So it's not like now where I feel like he comes off more like a weird, washed up, who the fuck is this old guy wearing bad makeup vibes. You know, but at that time period, it's like he was still culturally relevant. You know what I mean? So yeah, he had a lot of power and authority and fame surrounding him. And she was a professional actress, still is, but she'd been a child star. So I mean, she'd also been around like famous people to an extent. But I do think there's a difference between being like around, you know, other child actors and being around like a rock star.
She said in the documentary that she had no sex education, she was homeschooled and everything, and she mentions that even though she was playing these very experienced characters, because after she did
Mhm.
13, which she won a Golden Globe for, she became really big and pigeonholed into this, like, troubled teen, character,
She
right?
was
Like, just
typecast.
the
Yeah, I
role
mean, she
type
just got
thank you,
typecast.
typecast.
Yeah.
Even though she was playing all these really, like, dark and more mature young girls, she herself was still really unexperienced and, like, wasn't sure who she
Mhm.
was because she was, kind of sheltered. She'd been acting for such a long time, and she was living in kind of her own world with her family. And there was also some abuse or at least domestic violence happening between her parents when they were growing up.
Well, she talks about, like, her mom telling her at some point trying to explain a way that they argue all the time is like, "Well, that's what people who are in love do."
Yeah.
So she was also a
Ugh.
message from a very young age that, like, verbal violence and physical violence is part of a romantic relationship, which, you know, I do think sets you up, obviously, for normalizing what happens to you and if you fall into an abusive relationship yourself.
So after he kisses her, she thinks to herself, and this is what I was saying, like I could really relate to, is she says in the documentary, quote, "This guy can have whoever he wants, and he chose you. I was scared if I said no that we weren't going to be friends anymore," unquote. So this is literally what made me have my aha moment. I was like, oh, I did the same thing. I wanted to be whoever he wanted me to be. Like he chose me and I wanted to be. So like she didn't feel like she could say no or like you're married or whatever. Like she knew that he had this power and influence, but also she was like, oh, this really like super cool rock star thinks that I'm special and thinks that I'm smart and thinks that I
Mhm.
have something to say, and that felt good.
You know, I think between the grooming of yeah, because that was after, like, months of them, like, hanging out together and,
Yeah.
air quotes, "working on developing this Lewis Carroll inspired, like, piece that never actually happened." It's the grooming process, and then pretty quickly after they have that first kiss, he just, like, love bombed her so fucking hard. And again, like, you're 18 years old, and this famous, cool, edgy, like, sexy, dangerous rock star.
And then he's also saying things like, and this goes with the love bombing, is he's saying things like, "Oh, you've oh my god, ew." I just realized. So I think I've shared before that our abuser called me his muse, but Marilyn Manson does the same thing to Evan. He's like,
Mhm.
"You're my muse. I can be Marilyn Manson again, and it's all because of you. You've really inspired me to write again," and like all this stuff. And yeah, again, you're 18. That's a lot of pressure to be like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I have this man's career in my hands. This artist, I just have to keep being what he needs me to be so that he can create his artwork." Like, it's grooming to a T. In addition to watching the documentary Phoenix Rising, I also listened to a few podcasts to get an idea of updates in the case and lawsuits since the documentary came out, and also to get information of how the news was breaking in 2021, like what other people were saying about it. So
Mhm.
I listened to Disgraceland, the
Yep.
June 14th, 2026 episode. I also listened to No Filter with Zach Peter, which came out February 10th, 2021. So pretty quickly after, like about 2 weeks after Evan Rachel Wood came forward with her statement. I really liked this episode. First of all, it's hosted by a queer man, and I just want to be careful how I say this. I'm not diminishing anyone or tokenizing them as like my gay best friend, but that's literally what it listened to. It was like listening to. It was like he's just so like kind of sassy and funny, but does a really really great job going into a deep dive. Not even just like talk
Mhm.
covering about Evan Rachel Wood's history, but like he goes back and shares some other incidents of the past that like didn't make it into mainstream media. So, and then lastly, I listened to Outlaw with Eleanor Neal, the October 12th, 2025 episode. I feel like I kept hearing themes of the manosphere. I was able to kind of clock some of these characteristics. What Evan Rachel Wood said in the documentary is that he said something like his vibe was like, "I'm here to set you free and like show you who you really are." And, like I'm holding a mirror to like the reality, and like I know better than you, or like to experience real life, like you have to break out of the system kind of thing. And then just like hating women. Did you notice any elements of the
Yeah,
characteristics of the manosphere pop up anywhere?
yes, I would agree with you, and I think that it was also nice to see it reflected in, like, a weirdo. Do you know what I mean? Because I think it's so easy to think his manosphere is, like, especially after the documentary that we watched, is like, those were, like, bros, right? Like, they're all, like, ripped and, like, buff and, like, sports dudes and very specific version of manhood, and then a very specific kind of idea of what the manosphere is, and so I think seeing it reflected in someone that identified more as an outsider and probably, like, a geek when he was growing up, and they talk about in the documentary that, like, he got bullied a lot growing up and probably was, a victim of abuse himself. But it made me think of, like, our abuser a little more, right? Like, that idea of, like, he got bullied when he was growing up and he had all these insecurities because of it. And, like, instead of actually dealing with his shit and what happened to him, he then chose to just be angry and resentful, and in our case, like, take it out on students, and in, like, Marilyn Manson's case, take it out on the women around him? So I think it's important to kind of be able to recognize those manosphere traits are not limited only to the uber macho men in the world, because that's definitely not who Marilyn Monroe or Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Manson, like, that's not his vibe, right? Like, he's a
Yeah.
gender bending goth.
He, in his book, which came out in 1998, his autobiography, there's like a part in it where he writes that I was friendless and sexually frustrated, so I cut myself.
Mhm.
Or like I held a knife to my wrist or something like that. Don't quote me directly, but like that's pretty much what he says, is like I had no friends, I was sexually frustrated, so like I hurt myself. Like that is
Mhm.
manosphere kind of mentality of like, oh, it's everyone else's fault. Like I can't get laid. I have no friends. So like now I have to go cause pain on myself or someone else.
I feel like Marilyn Manson kind of had it both ways of, like, he got blamed a lot. I mean, I remember when Columbine happened, and I remember all the uproar about it, and, like, my school banned kids from being able to wear Marilyn Manson T-shirts. My brother was a big Marilyn Manson fan, and, like, it was, like, a problem at the school. Well, they were calling him a Satanist, and it was insane. Like, it was, like, if I feel like it was more like Satanic Panic vibe was the upset about him, and I don't ever
Yeah.
remember anyone actually talking about how he was treating women or, like, things he was actually doing in his personal life. It was always about his movie, like his music and his music videos and his concerts.
His depiction of violence against women, I think, was there from the very beginning. The podcast Disgraceland mentions that, like, one
Yep.
of before, like, he was super famous, like, one of his earliest shows, he's walking around a woman on a dog leash and, like, literally punching her in the face.
Fun.
From the beginning,
Mhm.
he's this is who he's been, and then once he got more famous, and then he was in committed relationships, like, he dated Rose McGowan, I think from, like, the late '90s to 2001, and then Dita Von Teese, I think, like, 2001 to 2006 or something, like, was even married to her. Both Rose McGowan and Dita Von Teese said that they divorced him because of drugs and because of his lifestyle. So I think he realized, like, "Oh, yeah, I can't pull this shit on grown ass women. Like, I need to target someone and convince them that this is what they also want." And that's exactly what he did,
Mhm.
because he cheated on Dita Von Teese with Evan Rachel Wood and then groomed and
Yeah.
abused her. It seems like the shift, to, like, the more violent videos where it's, like, more based on, like, sex slaves and, like,
Mhm.
bruised women and stuff happened, like, after his divorce with Dita Von Teese. Like, yeah, his videos
Mhm.
weren't beautiful pastoral lands before, but they didn't involve, like, hurting women as much.
Yeah.
He kept getting away with stuff. Classic groomer too.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, no one's called me out for the shit that I literally
Mhm.
wrote in my memoir. I can do this. It's fine."
His whole shtick was shock value, right? Like, that was his bread and butter of becoming famous, is he did things like cut himself on stage, for the shock value, and his videos were him as Christ on a cross made out of, like, TVs while he's wearing a bodysuit that gives him breasts, so he's, like, this androgynous, like, he was, like, doing things to, like, upset people, right? So I think that he was then able to use the irony is I think he was able to use his character of this big, evil, spooky guy to cover the fact that he was a big, evil, spooky guy, right? So, like, if
Mhm.
somebody said, "Oh, your music videos are really abusive towards women," he could be like, it's just shock value. I'm just doing it to, like, make you think about how culture abuses women." The same thing how he justified his, like, Nazi obsession. It's like, "Oh, no, this is me, like, parroting like how we obsess over fashion or consumerism and that just that's like the fascism of the industry, and it's like, bro, you just like Nazis and you
You
are
just
dressing
like
up as
Nazis.
one. You have Nazi tattoos, you put swastikas on your shit, you are a Nazi.
There's so many people who, like, have as witnesses been like, "You have made anti-Semitic jokes. You're a Nazi."
Yes. And she talks about that, Evan does in the documentary, because she is Jewish herself, and he used that against her and berated her for her, religion. And I think this is an interesting story, though, because most of the time the story is very like, "Oh, I never saw it coming. This guy was so nice," or "He was the pastor at the church, he had 2 kids, he mowed his lawn every Sunday, blah, blah, blah," right? And here you've got someone who's completely flipped it on its head, where it's like he's distracting you from his horrors with horror,
Mhm.
so then he can say, "Well, that's not me, that's my character," right? But he's really exploring all of these really dark impulses that he's having.
Something that Eleanor Neal of the Outlaw podcast said with regards to, like, "Oh, I'm just, like, pushing boundaries and I'm just, like, parody, whatever." When your quote unquote artwork is a doll of a black baby, like, just smeared and shit, and, like, there's a piece of paper next to it with the N word on it, like, and it's made by a white guy, like, how the fuck is that art? What are you trying to say? At one point, is that really just who the fuck you are? Like,
Yeah.
that's your own internal personality, your own internal self.
I think this is a good way to transition into heart-shaped glasses. So I remember this. I remember when this happened. So this was a music video that he had Evan Rachel Wood in. A clip in the documentary showed him talking that, like, she was wearing the sunglasses and that's what inspired the song, or that's what inspired him to have her in the video. But it's like, at that point, I think he was, I don't even know if their relationship was like public at that point.
He said the song came from, he said to her, "Don't break my heart and I won't break your heart-shaped glasses," which that in itself is like, Why are you breaking my shit?
See, I picture that more as you punch me in the face while I'm wearing them, and it's a threaten to, like, physically harm me, not my
Either
stuff
way,
as
they're
much.
bad.
But
Okay,
either way, it's true.
continue. That's what
It's true.
inspired it.
Don't break people's things. Yeah, there's a lot of her going back through old, like, letters and notes and texts and emails from him where he does a lot of messaging where he says things to her like, "I love you so much, I wanna smash your head in," and all these things, and when you think about that coupled with what she grew up in, right? Like, seeing people yell at each other and physically harm each other, and then being told this is what people who are in love do, I think is an important thing to remember because from the outside, I'm sure it would be easy to look in and be like, "Why the hell would you stay with somebody who says they wanna smash your brains in?" And it's like, "Okay, well, there's a lot more." It's complicated, but also, she had that childhood trauma playing a part of it. But Heart-Shaped Glasses, the music video shows them having sex, like, in the video, and then eventually it starts, like, raining blood, and they're, like, having sex, like, while blood's all over them, and I remember when this came out that it was this real, like, "I heard they were actually having sex," and it's like, "No, no, no, they weren't actually having sex." It was this big scandal about whether or not this video was depicting actual intercourse, right? And she was, like, what, 19 in that video or something?
She's
Super young.
19.
So she talks about it in the documentary, and it's pretty hard to listen to, you know what I mean? Like, she talks about how, like, the things that happened in the video were not what they agreed to do beforehand. He told her it was gonna be simulated sex, and then once they started rolling, he started penetrating her, and I don't know, she didn't necessarily say that she was on drugs, but other people had who were there that day on the production had said that she looked like she was on drugs, and she does
Mm.
mention on in the later on in the documentary that, like, she definitely had a drug problem at the time when she was with him, so it seems like she possibly was just kind of not
She did
with
say she
it.
was being, like, given absinthe a lot, like,
Oh,
during
that's
that
right.
day.
Yeah, they were, like,
Yeah.
drinking a lot of absinthe during it. But this kinda goes back to what we were talking about before, like, there obviously was no intimacy coordinator on this fucking set that day. She didn't have, like, an agent or a parent. There was nobody there advocating for her. She's 19 years
No
old.
one was looking out for
This
her.
No one's looking out for her, and they even, her mom and I think somebody else also talks about talking with people that were on the set of that production and saying, like, how uncomfortable they were and how inappropriate and unprofessional it was and how it was really weird, and everyone was just like, "What the fuck is going on?" But they both seemed to be into it, so we're just gonna get this shot and get the fuck out of here. So other people witnessed how weird this thing was that happened. But yeah, I mean, she just talks about how it's like, "Yeah, he raped me on camera." And then it went on
Mm.
national television. Like, what a devastating experience that was for her. Because yeah, she talks about how she immediately felt, like, dirty and like she had participated in something she didn't want to, and she's a professional actress also. So this is also not somebody who's like, naivete, "Oh, well, she just didn't understand what the" it's like, dude, this is a person that had been in many movies. She knows how a set's supposed to work. She understands the process, and what he did was not a normal day shooting a music video.
Something that they get into in the documentary is that everyone was mad at her, and everyone
Mhm.
was like, "How dare you, like, be in such a video, such an awful thing." But no one was like, "How dare he want to
Mhm.
create such." I shouldn't say no one. I'm sure there are people out there who are like, "What the fuck's up with this guy?" But she got most of the backlash because, like you were saying,
Yeah.
Sarah, like, it was almost like, "Oh, well, that's Marilyn Manson, the character, like, of course he's gonna do that," but and then like, no accountability, no nothing, but then her career kind of took a hit from it
Yeah.
because, like, then she felt like sh no people didn't see her as, like, a serious actress. She was now, like, this porn star in Marilyn Manson's new
Mhm.
video.
But yeah, I think it's very common that the women get blamed in the situation, but it's crazy to look back at it now with, like, 2026 eyes of like, "Oh my god, this is so fucked up and not pointed at the right person."
So this what happens is after she leaves him in 2011. So about 5 years after that, she speaks out for the first time about her experience as a survivor of abuse, but she doesn't name him, and that won't happen for another 5 years. But when she gives testimony, and this is correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, you're always so much better at picking up these details, but she did testimony to voice her support of extending the California statute of limitation laws from 1 to 3 years to 10 years.
Mhm.
And, after that, spoil only got a it only, expanded until 5 years. But anyway, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that, I'm sure. But, after she testified, she started getting contacted by a bunch of people who, even though she
Mhm.
didn't name Brian Warner, there were women who, like, listened to her testimony and were like, "Oh,
Sure.
I know who she's talking about, and I also have a story." And so she then started meeting with, other, victims of this. Um
Yes, so she was testifying to support the bill because she said at the end of it, like, I know this will make no impact on my situation, but I want to make this easier for other people coming forward." So it was very cool to see her participate in legislative action because that's something we talk about all the time on our pod. It's just like, you got to put that fucking energy somewhere. And it seems, or not seems, more comfortable doing that first, right? Than like going after her abuser directly. Um, which I think just goes to show there are many ways to move forward
Mhm.
through these things, right? Like you don't ever have to go after your direct abuser, but you can do things to make it easier for other people moving forward. So she meets with the other victims of Manson. A few of, two of least Sarah and Ashley are like ex girlfriends, and there's another Ashley who is actually an assistant of his. And there's more besides those people, but they were the ones kind of featured in the documentary, and they're sharing stories about what happened to them. And it's brutal. Like I would say, it's like if you haven't watched this documentary, take care of yourself, like, is a very heavy one, and the abuse is not only like sexual, it is physical, like beatings, torture, mutilation. I mean, it's pretty intense level of abuse that her and the other survivors went through. So I would just say that, like, you know check your boundaries and limitations before you partake in this one if you haven't seen it already. And then they talk a lot about like her trying to leave and going back to him, and trying to leave and going back to him, and how she finally does leave him, which I enjoyed the depiction of that as well, because so often survivors or victims are blame for not leaving. People don't understand it, right? There's so much manipulation going on. But yeah, the first time she tried to leave him, he kept calling. And every time she didn't pick up the phone, he would cut himself. And so he like claimed to have cut himself like 158 times in one day because she didn't answer the phone. I was like, oh my God, this is such classic
How
manipulation, dude. Like
does
it's so
anyone
fucked
idolize
up.
this? It's
Yeah, fuck this guy. Seriously. If you're still digging Marilyn Manson, y'all need to go think about your life choices. Anyways, so I mean, I appreciated that she was honest, about how she struggled to get away from him. And in the end, it was really her family being able to rally around her and make space for her, which is great. But I think also something to acknowledge of like not everybody has that. And people truly need community to get out of those situations. She also talks about how she got pregnant because he wouldn't let her use birth control, and he refused
and
to wear
he
a
wouldn't, yeah.
condom, which is the most manosphere bullshit I've ever heard. Like listening to her say like, well, I would try one birth control and he wouldn't like it. And I would try another and he wouldn't like it. I'm like, what a fucking arrogant, controlling piece of shit. Like, who cares what you like? It's her body. Obviously, understatement of the century, but I was just like listening to it and I was like, oh my God, what a fucking douchebag. Anyways, she ends up getting an abortion, which is very traumatic for her. Obviously, like even though she knew that was the right choice for herself, like was still a very traumatic experience. And then he like expected her to make dinner right afterwards, and like didn't care that she just had an abortion, and was like, I don't care, you're in pain, fucking go serve me, which again is very manosphere crap.
Manosphere. I'm telling you, like Manosphere and
Yeah.
Epstein is Marilyn Manson. Like,
Mhm.
fuck this
Yeah,
guy.
with a lot of eyeliner. Um
Ugh.
yeah, so I think, that was a big kind of breaking point for her as well. So she gets out of the relationship, and then she also talks about how she started dating somebody else afterwards and didn't realize how bad her PTSD was and how her trauma really fucked shit up for her for a long time. And like she really struggled feeling safe with intimate partners, and she struggled with, physical intimacy with people. And she really had to do getting away wasn't enough, right? Like getting away was the first step, but she also had to like work through everything. Which I think is also really nice to hear, because so often I think a lot of people from the outside just see it's like, oh, well, you're out, it's done. It's over. You're fine now. We can move forward. And I think this documentary shows very clearly that that's not how it works. Because then he ends up having an album come out while they're making the documentary. And because the album came out, I'm sure a lot of people like you and I, Diana, were like, fuck this guy. Let's not forget beep bop a boop, and started resharing news clips of her testifying to get that law passed. Even though she didn't name him, everyone kind of knew who she was talking about. And so that story started coming back up in the news. And then she gets told that he is starting to threaten other survivors, and that fans are starting to threaten survivors. And fans are taking pictures of his victims' houses and posting them on social and threatening to kill them. So this goes back to why I think we shouldn't idolize people we
Mm.
don't know, right? Because you can create a level of fandom that is truly fucking dangerous. So his fan base starts to turn in the documentary on the survivors, and so she's told that she needs to get out of her house. Like, it's suggested to her, you need to get out of your house. At this point, she also has had a child with a different person, so she has to get her kid out of the house. And that was like heartbreaking to see, because here she is, like, how many years later, at least a decade probably after leaving this guy, and she's still having to hide from him and run from him for fear that he's gonna like hurt her. Is how a lot of survivors feel for a very long time. You know what I mean? Like, whether or not your abuser has the capacity to physically harm you, or if it's litigiously harm you, or go after your character on the internet or whatever it might be, like, that does hang there for a long time for so many people. And I think it was very powerful to kind of have the cameras there with her as she's having to, run off to a family member's house or some random cabin to like keep herself safe. And at that point, she hadn't even spoken out against him yet. I think it's a good example of, this is why women don't come forward. This is why they don't say
Yes.
anything, because it's fucking dangerous. It is scary and it can be very dangerous. But in the end, she does end up naming him via a social media post. And there's a lot of content showing her kind of getting ready to do it, writing it, talking to her like agents and her PR team. And they're, of course, trying to talk her out of it. And I could really resonate with that. Like, that reminded me a lot of like when you and I first started, because she was like, everyone just keeps telling me to be careful and to be cautious and keep quiet. And, if I do this, it's going to fuck up my career. Or, I'm going to end up fucking this other thing up. And she's like, I'm so tired of being told to be quiet. And she's like, that's what I've been doing this whole time. And all I'm doing is protecting him. And I was like, oh, that's how it felt when we had to like pump the
Yeah.
brakes and not like send out our big press release. It was like, God damn it. No, I could definitely relate with that part of it. And then just the nerve wracking aspect of like posting about your abuse and naming your abuser, like, is scary enough for you or I to do with our 300 friends on Facebook or whatever. But to be a famous person in your own right talking about another famous person, like, you're about to blow shit up, and
Right.
like
And you know
on a
that, like, they have a
level,
fan base.
a fan base that apparently is okay with videos of harming women and mutilating animals and doing all kinds of crazy shit. So
Yeah.
like, it's not like you have a fan base of like Mr. Rogers fans, you know what I mean? Like, who are gonna
Right.
like deliver creepy puppets to your house, perhaps. It's like, this is a whole other category of a fan base. Yeah, and I think it's really beautiful watching her just kind of move through that, like, I just appreciated, I guess, how like raw the documentary is, and she really shows herself like go win through, um and definitely like, her emotions get, I think it's important to see, because, a lot of that trauma and a lot of those moments happen behind closed doors for so many of us, including her. A lot of those scenes that she's, with her brother or maybe one of her parents, and that's it. You know what I mean? There's a very small circle of people that she has around her that she's allowing to be in those moments with her. And so I think that's kind of nice to see also as a survivor, because I think we all have those small circles of people.
Yeah, I mean, it took 10 years to get to a place where she felt like she was safe enough to
Yeah.
publicly name him. It's so I hate saying the word brave, but I don't know what else to say. It was
Yeah.
really brave of her to do that because it was such a risk, and sometimes you just don't even care anymore. You're like, fuck it, like I'll risk it. The benefit like outweighs the risk,
Mhm.
like I it's more
Well, and
important for
that
me to like speak up than it is to,
yeah. And I
not.
wonder if what part of made her feel finally ready to do it is that she had found those other victims at that
Yes.
point, and they were coming forward and they were naming him. So I think she was in a position where if I don't say his name, I'm not standing next to these women in the way that I want to be standing next to these women and show them support and like be part of this, sisterhood with them. Yeah, I think that was probably a really big part of it, I would assume, in her decision to finally feeling like I need to say who this person is so that I can be like bolstering these other women's experiences as well.
Well, thank you for giving us a nice little summary of how part 2 ended. Some updates as far as, like, what's happened with the cases,
Yeah, I'm
after the
interested.
documentary came out. Sure. Well, before I get to those updates, I do want to just mention I learned on one of the podcasts that in 2013, there was a lawsuit from at that time a Jane Doe who claims that when she was 16 years old in 1995, she was attacked, raped, and eventually groomed by Marilyn Manson. She was raped by him, and then he kept her number. And for a few more years, like he was making her send him pictures of herself, but also her friends. And so that's like where the grooming comes into place. Anyway, recently, this woman who is now 44 years old has identified herself as Bianca Elaine Keene. And she says that, she's reached a place where the shame is no longer hers to carry.
Mhm.
And she's no longer afraid to say her name and to him and to the support for the victims of him. And by victims, I mean like the legal definition, like a victim of a crime that he committed.
Yes.
So I just want to like put that
So
out there
sidebar,
because
I just want to sidebar real quick. Bianca is in that UK documentary that I mentioned. So
really
that documentary is the only one that she's in because she was a minor at the time.
amazing friends in the UK. Let us know about this documentary. It's called Marilyn Manson Unmasked. If you
Yes.
liked
And
it,
it's from
or even if you
Channel
didn't like it,
4.
we want to hear your thoughts.
It looks like it's only 3 episodes.
I would love to hear. Maybe I will look up online
And
if I can find
Evan
anything.
Rachel Wood's in it as well.
What year did it come out?
January 2025. So
Oh,
not
so
that
pretty
long ago.
recently. So after Evan Rachel Wood came forward and named him publicly, Marilyn Manson denied the allegations and he sued her for defamation and emotional distress and blah, blah, blah. My reputation. Bitch, you made your own fucking reputation. Okay, whatever.
Okay, can we also just real sidebar real quick? I'm sorry, real quick about that scene where the video he made that was just like for his website of him literally just torturing a woman, like just
Oh, the
like
groupie
home
video?
shaky. Yes, the groupie video. And then the video of him sitting and talking at a table with like Daryl Hannah of all fucking people. And what was that guy's name? Dick.
Andy Dick.
Dude. Andy Dick. Stupid Andy Dick. And what's his butt? Who's
John
still around?
Favreau.
Has a night. Yes, they're just sitting there asking about it, and they're all like, ah, ha, ha, ha. And then what happened? And he's like, and then we just like beat the shit out of her, and they're all just like casually talking to him about this fucking video. God damn it, it's not just the person. Like to your point before, Diana, it is also how many fucking people are around this guy for so long and watch him do all these things, but they want the money, they want the clout, they want the infamy or the relation to fame, and so they like don't say anything. God, fucking
People are
infuriating.
telling them like,
Anyways.
"Oh, it's just art and you don't understand. He's pushing
Mm.
boundaries." There was an old interview that was released by Rolling Stone that was done in 2015. So it's 2 years after the lawsuit from the Jane Doe, and yeah, 6 years before Evan Rachel Wood named him, where he does an interview with Rolling Stone and he says that he doesn't like the word rape. He prefers to call it a struggle snuggle
What?
because rape is for cowards and lazy people. He likes to put in the work to mentally break down a woman to the point where she has no other choice but to submit. Like that's not just like shock value
What?
anymore. You're like fucking admitting that this is who you are.
That's insanity. And it's also insanity to your point that that wasn't like immediate done. We're done.
You just confessed. Is this a crime? Is it a crime to mentally break down a woman? Probably not. God damn it.
I
God
mean,
damn it.
that's I'm sorry, you like almost made a jingle instead of like, God damn it.
I don't know, because otherwise, what am I gonna do? I'm like fuming right now. I'm sweating. I'm so mad.
No, it's true. It's wild. And there's still other, it's like that UFC guy. People still
Ugh,
like him. He raped a woman to the point where they had to surgically remove her tampon afterwards.
that's
And there are still
disgusting.
people who are like, this guy's the fucking goat. And it's like, some people really just do not have the same moral compass as us. And by us, I don't just mean you and me. I'm not saying we're better than everybody else, but like, you know what I mean? I think when you have empathy and you have a moral compass, you have maybe the foolish point of view that you assume everyone else does too. And they don't. Some people fucking do not care,
Some people don't care. And
AKA
either
everyone who voted for Trump. They don't care.
fuck
He was a
Trump and fuck you for
convicted
voting
sex
for him.
offender.
He admitted to assaulting women without their permission, and we still not we.
Ah! Anyways,
Okay,
anyways.
okay. Anyways, so it was an amazing hiss.
Thank
So
you.
back to the updates. He denies the allegations. He did sue her because he's a bitch. And then ultimately, he did drop the
Mm,
lawsuit.
okay.
He admitted to nothing, but he agreed to pay her attorney fees.
Well, that's good.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if she got a like settlement money as well, but it doesn't matter. If she did, great. If not, that sucks. So, in addition to Evan Rachel Wood's claims, at the height of the Me Too movement in 2018, Marilyn Manson was the subject of a Los Angeles County District Attorney investigation over the filing of a police report against him alleging unspecified sex crimes dating back to 2011. He denied the allegations. And then in 2025, early 2025, the LA County DA dropped the charges. They
Mm,
dropped the charges because of statute of limitation laws and also
mhm.
because there wasn't enough evidence. And a lot of his supporters, like so many other people, have taken this to mean that that means that there was no crime. But as you and I know, Sarah, that there often isn't a ton of evidence when it comes to abuse.
Dear, dear listeners have learned that along the way at this point. We
And
don't
then
have to
tell
explain that.
other people too, please. Let them
Yes.
know.
Yes. Just because there wasn't a trial does not mean there was not a crime. Or just because there wasn't a conviction.
In January of this year, actually, 2026, this is a story from nme.com. And I don't know what that stands
Mhm.
for, but the author is Adam England. And it says a previously dismissed sexual assault case from one of Marilyn Manson's former assistants was revived on Monday, January 26th, a year after the LA County District Attorney's Office confirmed he wouldn't be pressing any charges. Ashley Walters' case against Manson was first filed in 2021, but was seemingly killed last year. In January 2025, prosecutors confirmed that Warner would not be facing any charges after a years long investigation into sexual assault and domestic abuse allegations. And in December, the sexual assault lawsuit was dropped. Okay, so I'm sorry, it was dropped in December. Anyway, yes, that was a correction. However, a new California law that gives sexual assault allegations more time to go to the courts took effect a few weeks ago, prompting its revival. So this case that was dropped is now being reopened.
Yeah, I mean, I think and her case is probably more complicated because she was on his payroll, right? So like that might help or hurt. Like there might be other charges they could like get against him because she was an employee and he was, her boss essentially. But I could see that also making it muddier depending on the specific kind of charges they're trying to press against him.
Okay, so Game of Thrones actress Esme Bianco, who was a girlfriend of Marilyn Manson, she claimed that he chased her with an axe and assaulted her during a
Hmm.
shoot for a music video. She later sued him as well, claiming additionally that he raped her numerous times and that he also let other people rape her. He denied these allegations, of course, said that they were provably false. In 2023, Bianco and Manson settled out of court, though it should be noted that Bianco continues to rail against Manson publicly and Manson continues to maintain his innocence. So, this is one of the cases that did settle out of court, but thankfully, Esme Bianco did not have to sign any kind of like NDA or confidentiality
Good
agreement or
for
anything.
her.
And she still gets to talk about what happened to her and she still gets to say, fuck Marilyn Manson. He's a piece of shit for her.
Yeah. NDAs should be illegal.
Okay, so another ex-girlfriend, Morgan Smithline, she did an interview with People Magazine in 2021 where she called Manson a monster. She claimed that he cut her, whipped her, sexually assaulted her. Smithline also went on The View and talked about suing Marilyn Manson for rape and human trafficking. So in 2023, a judge dismissed Smithline lawsuit, and then she also later recanted her testimony and said that
Mhm.
Evan Rachel Wood and others manipulated her into making her accusations against Marilyn Manson. In a sworn statement, she said, quote, I succumbed to pressure from Evan Rachel Wood and her associates to make accusations of rape and assault against Mr. Warner that were not true. Eventually, I started to believe that what I was repeatedly told happened to Miss Wood and others also happened to me, unquote.
Sorry, to be clear, her first name is Ashley, so it's Ashley Morgan Smithline,
Okay, thank you so much. I felt like
and
there was
she
one
is in
missing.
the documentary, and that same
Okay.
group scene.
I'm gonna link a story that came out in February 2023, where Evan Rachel Wood responds to what Ashley Morgan Smithline said. But I'll read a little bit of what she said. But before I read what she said, I want to say that it's not unfathomable to me as someone who has as a survivor who has worked with a law firm and who knows other survivors who have worked with the law firm to feel pressured by attorneys.
Mhm.
And I would not be surprised if Evan Rachel Wood's attorneys, not at the direction of Evan Rachel Wood, but because their own self interest, were pressuring other people. But I don't believe that it was Evan Rachel Wood being like, you have to jump on the story, whatever. And if anything, yeah, Ashley Morgan Smithline initially contacted Evan Rachel Wood. So the story, this new story that's from Jezebel.com, Evan Rachel Wood, it goes into talking about how Evan presented a lot of evidence to
Mhm.
counter argue this claim, and evidence meaning like Smithline, just like a lot of evidence to show like I never tried to convince anyone of anything. What she says in this article, quote, I never pressured or manipulated Ashley Morgan Smithline to make any accusations against Manson. And I certainly never pressured or manipulated her to make accusations that were not true. It was Miss Smithline who first contacted me in March 2019.
I think it's important to include it, right? Like we have to like talk about all aspects of it. Same with like, Dita Von Teese is his ex-wife. Like she has not like defended him, but she has stated that like, these experiences other people had with him are not the experiences I had with him. And I think did Rose McGowan ever speak out?
She also spoke out, but she same thing, like, did not defend him, and if anything, she said, "I stand with the survivors, and we have to hold men accountable." But, yeah, I don't know if she ever said anything about, like, "Oh, he was so great." Like, she admitted, like, "Yeah, the lifestyle was too much, there was too many drugs."
The point being, some people have interpreted Dita Von Teese saying this was not my experience with him as it the same as saying, well, if he didn't do it to me, that he couldn't have done it to them, which A, I do not think at all is what she's saying, because she also went on to say, like, I'm so sorry for what happened to people and I hope that they have support and are taking care of themselves and all these things. Like I think sometimes people have this rose colored glass that they think just because they didn't do it to everyone, then that means they couldn't have done
Mhm.
it to anyone. And I do think that Dita Von Teese's statement was kind of used against. I don't think that was her intention, but I think a lot of people use that to justify their support of him by saying, well, hey, this was his wife. They were together for like 7 years. She would know. And it's like, not necessarily, dude. Like, maybe he wasn't at that point yet where he was doing this to people, right? Like, it kind of seems like he went off a fucking deep end after he got together with Evan. Like, that was really the kickoff of him starting this new chapter of being like a truly monstrous monster.
I think that there's a reason why he sought out Evan while he was still married, because he knew
Mhm.
that his marriage was falling apart because Dita Von Teese wasn't down with his lifestyle, wasn't down with how he was partying and everything. And the other women, like some the other women, so about 15 women have come forward with allegations of abuse or domestic violence. And most of these women aren't big name celebrities. They're people he found on social media. They're people he found on modeling websites. Like, they're like
Mhm.
smaller actresses. And that's not a coincidence. So even though about 15 women have come forward, no charges have ever been made. And he continues to deny allegations. He continues to make music. He continues to tour. But Evan Rachel Wood continues to talk openly about him. I will also link an article that came out just 3 days ago from Metal Hammer, the world's biggest and best. Hold on. Metal Hammer, the world's biggest and best metal magazine. And it came out 3 days ago, where she talks a little bit more about what it was like dating Marilyn Manson and him being a narcissist. So proud to know that she is still talking about what happened to her and using that to help
Yeah.
other people.
I want people to care a little bit more and like think about who they're giving their money to and like who they're giving their attention to these like pitiful little shitheads that really don't deserve it. It's like if you love the music, you can still listen to it. That's fine. Do it in your car, bro. You don't need to go to the show. Don't be giving this person like hundreds of dollars of your hard-earned money.
I went to a Marilyn Manson show in probably like 2019.
You're part of the
I
problem.
listen, and actually, this is a great place to put this information. In my teens, I fucking loved Marilyn Manson. And I'm a fan of the dark. I'm a fan of the macabre.
Mhm.
Like I'll talk about death whenever. I am into kink. Like there's some things that, but like all of that is like consensual. There's aftercare, there's whatever. It's despite what Sarah says, I'm not a prude, okay? But there is a difference. There is a difference between like there's a humanity that you always come back to. Like he wants to not be human. He wants to be this monster. He
Yeah.
wants to get rid of his humanity. And if that's your goal, then you're not creating art, because art, you need humanity to appreciate
Mhm.
art. Like it has to speak to you on a human level. And if you're not doing that you're just creating torture porn and like disgusting shit that does not need to be replicated or amplified or glorified. Anyway, yes, I did watch a Marilyn Manson concert in 2019. It sucked. It was so bad. I wouldn't even be like, "Oh, it was actually a great show and too bad that he sucks as an artist." No, it was a bad show. He sounded awful. It was so
Well,
boring.
good.
There was like no theatrics. Look, put on all the eyeliner you want. Be androgynous. It's hot, but don't
It's true.
punch women in the face and call it art. Don't be an anti-Semite. Anti-Semite. So come back and listen to the recap episode, friends. But in the
We'll
meantime,
be here.
give us a follow on
Mhm.
social media at Blooming After Pod. Also, give us a follow wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're
Mhm.
there, also give us a rating, maybe leave a comment, and send us an email if you'd like, bloomingaftergrooming@gmail.com. Oh, but there's also a website, and the website
Yeah.
is bloomingafterpod.com. And now, truly, finally, listeners, do your best to grow through.
What you go through. Oh, that
I
was the
think that's
cheesiest
the
one yet.
best I've ever done it. We said complete opposite things.
The first week is looking good for me. Besides 1 p.m. on Friday, I have a dentist appointment.
Can we do Friday, August 7th at 1 o'clock to talk about?
I literally just said that's the one time I couldn't do because I have a dentist appointment.